Unfortunately, after that album, something very sad happened. Chris O'Leary was killed in a car accident. From what I know, he was killed by a drunk driver. Horrible. And the album that came afterwards for that one was an album called Handful of Rain, which I do not have on me. Haven't heard it. I probably heard one song from it. I can't remember the name of it. And I think it came out in '94, which was only 1 year after John Oliva lost his brother. I mean, that's a devastating loss. At that point, they had fired the drummer, Steve. I think he had been fired. He either left or was fired, either way. And it was just the three of them. John Oliva's a pretty talented musician. He played drums on that album. From what I hear about that album, I hear that's a good one. Not as good as the last 4 albums, but it's still good. I may get that one next, personally, but yeah, and I think the title Handful, I think it was in tribute to him, and I think the live album that they made afterwards, live in Japan, I think, or Ghost in the Ruins, I think it was called, which is a song off of the Streets. Yeah, that concert, I think that was partially a tribute to Chris, and John Oliva was performing with them again, but as a keyboardist, and he did sing the lead on a few songs. So after that, they expanded the line. They got a new drummer, Jeff Plate. They got Chris Cafferty back in the group. And who was the other guy? I think it was Al Petrelli. Yeah, yep, I'm right. It was Al Petrelli. So he joined the group. And John Oliva was still on the keyboards, and he actually sings a few songs on this album. And I recently talked about this album in my last video, Dead Winter Dead, a concept album. So for the concept, this one is about, I think it's 2 countries, like it's taking place after the fall of the Berlin Wall, battle between Serbia and a Muslim girl and a Serbian boy. They meet each other, from opposing sides, fall in love. So it's sort of a Romeo and Juliet sort of a thing that, they're both sides are arguing, and it's all in the winter. It's a long winter, and there are little men just creating conflict between the two sides, just for the hell of it. And it's a good album. It's not. This is the one with the hit that Trans-Siberian that led to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra being a thing. Unlike Streets, this one, liner notes are interesting. Like Streets, it has a synopsis, but it lets you know where each song is in parentheses. That's pretty helpful. And then also in the lyrics, there are little poems in between that are not recited on the album, but you can only read on here. So when you're listening to it, you want to read these. I'll give you a better idea of what happens in the story. So, yeah, this is a good album. A little dramatic at times, a little bit, I don't know, a little bit pompous and over the top. Yeah, it's not a bad album. And as you can see here, yeah, this is what I'm talking about with John Oliva not wanting to being credited as a member of the group. There's 5 guys on there. Just like I showed you, there's 4 guys here. Yeah. Starting with the next album, he was pictured with the group. So, good album, but get it later. So. Right, the one that came after that was The Wake of Magellan, and this too is a concept album. This came out actually in 1997 I think in Europe, and then it came out here in '98 in the States. Kind of weird there. And there's John Oliva right there. See, there's 6 of them now. So, in terms of Wake of Magellan, this is an ambitious album. Very ambitious. Look at the booklet. Look how thick that is. Wake of Magellan is partially based on two different stories. One being uh, three people being thrown off board, or thrown off their ship. I can't remember the name of the crisis, or you can look it up on Wikipedia or whatever it is. It, it deals with that story about people being thrown off a ship, and a woman named Veronica Guerin, who was an Irish reporter and was killed on the job, I think, by drug lords and whatnot. So with that in mind, it's about a guy named Hector Magellan who thinks he's related to the Magellan himself, but some people don't think it's true. And he's an old man. I don't know how. I think it hints that he's about 80 or 70, or he's an old guy. So he decides to set off ashore on a ship, and he comes across three different people, each with a story to tell, that were thrown off their ships. And one succumbed to drugs, one was the Irish reporter, one, was just thrown off and is still swimming. So it's structured the same way like Dead Winter Dead, in that it has the story first, and has the lyrics and the poems with them too. And between the two albums, I prefer this one, just because it's a more there's more of a story going on here, where Dead Winter Dead, while it was a good album, just two sides fighting. I mean, that's all you need to know. But there's more going on in this album, and even musically. Yeah, it's a more rocking album than the last one, so worth checking out. Now, during this time, they had Trans-Siberian Orchestra to worry about, and Trans-Siberian Orchestra were becoming more and more popular. So what happened afterwards was they really just put more of their effort in there. I think they pulled in some other guys. I think Al Petrelli left at one point. Just flip-flopping to the point where they didn't have a second guitarist, and Zach Stevens left. So they were left as a four-piece group. So for the next album, John Oliva decided to take over as lead singer again. So the next album was another concept album, Poets and Madmen. Compared to the other two, this one isn't as strong, but it's still worth a listen here. This one is interesting. Based off of a real story about a photojournalist named Kevin Carter, who, for those of you who are unaware, you can go and look up his name. He was a photographer who took a picture. I can't remember where it was, but it was a very famous picture. I'm sure if you just Google his name, you'll find the picture in Google Images. And it's a picture of a starving child. I think the child was dead or dying, and right next to him or her was a vulture, just there at the right moment, the right time. Has his picture shown to the world, and some people thought it was a beautiful shot, that it showed the horrors of what was going on in whatever country it was. I can't remember. But then there were others who thought, well, you could have, given the kid something to eat or something. I mean, you could have saved him. So he succumbed to depression and later killed himself. Worth checking out more on him. This guy, Kevin Carter. However, that story is not this album. It's instead about a group of three teenage boys who are playing around, and then they somehow stumble upon an insane asylum, and they walk in there and they find Kevin Carter, and he's in a cell. And they find a folder with his name and documents in there, and a picture which is included in. Yeah, when I opened up this picture fell out, and I got really concerned of what I just purchased. I thought, oh boy, I got one of them girly magazines or something like that. I mean, what kind of thing did I? And it says, the only reason I have left is you. This is supposed to be his girlfriend. So it gives you sort of a thing to hold, which is sort of cool for a concept album. But yeah, the album is these teenage boys opening up this folder and reading all of these stories. Again, there's a synopsis and there's a story that goes before it and then the lyrics. So it's like the other two albums, except this one's a little more loose and changing the story of Kevin Carter, which I think is an interesting story in itself, but maybe in some ways they didn't want to get sued by whatever family he had left, so yeah. And this was released in 2001, and to date, 15 years later, this is the last Savatage album that's ever been released, studio-wise. Because apart from a tour from 2003, or 2002 to 2003, or something like that, Savatage remained on the back burner, because Trans-Siberian Orchestra became bigger and bigger. So the songs weren't being played. So, I mean, the guys went off. I mean, alumni of Savatage all went in other groups. I can't name them all. I think one was called Circle to Circle. I know Chris Cafferty did something. And the one I know about, John Oliva, he formed his own group, John Oliva's Pain. And he formed that group, as he explains it. And they're very honest about this. Compared to Savatage and Trans-Siberian Orchestra, I think Trans-Siberian Orchestra is the one that's paying, you know, that's where the money's coming from. But then again, there are people who want to hear those Savatage songs. So what John Oliva was trying to do, he formed this group, John Oliva's Pain, as a way, you know, okay, if you want to hear the Savatage songs, you can come and see me, and I'll play them, along with some original material, which I haven't listened to, but, and I think they still tour, I don't know. And then just last year, 2015, last summer, at Wacken, which is a German heavy metal festival, the band reunited for a show. Now, what ended up happening was they played Savatage for the first time, you know, all on the same stage for the first time in years, but they couldn't help but bring on Trans-Siberian Orchestra, so they brought some people from Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I think 2 stages connected at some point, and they played as Trans-Siberian Orchestra a little, but they played Savatage songs. I think most of the songs were from Wake of Magellan, from what I'm to understand. But nevertheless, the guys got back together, so could this be the beginning of something? I mean, I think Trans-Siberian Orchestra was still going around the rest of 2015. But I'm hearing little rumors here and there, even on Wikipedia. I mean, with Wikipedia, you know, you gotta be careful with how much you believe and whatnot. But from what I'm hearing on there, or even in interviews, it's been hinted that John Oliva's writing new material, potentially for a new Savatage studio album. Could that lead to a reunion tour? I think it could, because they could go on tour of Savatage, and because none of the members are really associated with Trans-Siberian Orchestra, like, nobody's gonna, like, the average Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert goer is not gonna go there just to see the guys in Savatage. Or they probably don't even know who the hell Savatage are, who these guys are. They couldn't care less. So I think they could just get a bunch of hired hands, you know, like session musicians. Like I know they have Jeff Scott Soto in one touring band. They got guys who've been in the business. Yeah, get those guys to go on tours, TSO, and then get all the other guys who are Savatage alumni and have them tour. But, you know, fingers crossed they do something sometime soon. If you like Savatage, let me know what your favorite album is, favorite song. If you want to get into Savatage, go right ahead. I just gave you a little bit of a head start. Reminder, I think if you need to start somewhere, you need to start with this. It's a good place to start, called The Mountain King. And then you can get the other 3 albums that came after it, because that's like their big, I guess their peak, even if they really weren't all that successful. And then you can pick and choose what you want after that. So, yeah, hope this helps if you wanted to get into Savatage, because I think they're a great band, very underrated. And I think they deserve more attention. So, yeah, thanks for watching.